Greed, a word that carries the weight of sin, the stain of selfishness, and the shadow of destruction. Yet, within its shadow lies an unexpected light, a paradoxical gift that, if understood, can guide us toward balance, transcendence, and even godhood. Greed is one of humanity's most primal traits. It is woven into the fabric of our being, influencing how we live, what we seek, and how we interact with the world. At its core, greed is the desire for more resources, more power, more experiences. It drives us forward, yet it often drags us into a pit of dissatisfaction and harm. There is only one type of greed, and that is superhuman greed. Humans, though capable of remarkable feats, are still animals in much of their nature. We are driven by primal instincts to eat, to impress, to experience the trance of cultural human animality. This dance of desires is what fuels our existence, yet it is also what traps us in cycles of vanity and emptiness. We see this cycle everywhere. People striving endlessly to accumulate wealth, possessions, and status often find themselves no closer to fulfillment. They become like hamsters on a wheel, running faster and faster, but getting nowhere. And yet, greed persists. Why? Because it is embedded in our evolution. In the natural world, greed ensured survival. The greedy animal stored more food, fought harder for territory, and secured its lineage. But in the modern world, where survival is no longer the primary concern for many, greed has morphed into something far more complex and often destructive. And therein lies the problem. To transcend this cycle, humanity must evolve its greed into something more, something divine. Greed, when left unchecked, becomes a chain. But when refined, it can be the very tool that propels us toward godhood, where desires serve creation rather than consumption. Greed is a sin when it renders a being helpless, weighed down by an overabundance of memory and history. It is the endless craving for what was or what could be a fixation that paralyzes action and breeds destruction. Imagine a person consumed by regret or longing, endlessly replaying past failures or fantasizing about an unattainable future. This form of greed, tied to memory, becomes a prison. It locks the individual in a cycle of desire and despair, preventing them from acting meaningfully in the present. Perhaps this is why nature, in its wisdom, grants us bodily resets. Sleep, forgetfulness, and even death act as safeguards against the infinite greed that would otherwise consume us. Without these natural interruptions, the mind would spiral into chaos, overwhelmed by its own desires. These resets are not punishments but gifts, regulating our impulses and reminding us of the futility of unchecked rivalry. Without them, humanity's greed would spiral into chaos, drowning the world in its unquenchable thirst. Even civilizations bear the scars of unchecked greed. Empires have risen and fallen because of insatiable desires for expansion and dominance. History is littered with the ruins of societies that sought more than they could sustain. From the fall of Rome to the financial collapses of modern times, greed has shown its destructive potential. And yet, in each downfall lies a lesson, a chance to rethink and redefine our relationship with this powerful force. But greed is not inherently evil. Like fire, it can destroy, or it can illuminate. Greed becomes a gift when it transforms into the desire to share. When we allow our overflowing cups to replenish others, when we give to those who have not, and receive from those who have all, we create balance. This balance is not just necessary for individuals but for the world and the universe itself. Consider the philanthropist who uses their wealth not to hoard but to build schools, feed the hungry, and advance society. Their greed for impact, when aligned with the needs of others, becomes a force for good. Contrast this with the billionaire who hoards resources, driven by fear of loss or a compulsion to dominate. In both cases, greed is present, but the outcomes are vastly different. Greed, when expressed as sharing and giving, becomes beneficial to all. It drives progress, fosters connection, and replenishes the energy of life. By recognizing the comedy in our greed, the absurdity of our desires, we can learn to channel it constructively. After all, the universe thrives on chaos and unexpected outcomes, often born from acts of greed. In this context, greed can be seen as a mirror of the universe itself, expansive, chaotic, and full of potential. The stars themselves are born from a kind of cosmic greed, a gravitational pull that gathers matter into something greater than the sum of its parts. If the universe can transform chaos into creation, can we not do the same with our greed? To master greed, one must first accept it. Suppressing greed only leads to stagnation. Burying it creates pressure that eventually explodes. Instead, we must balance greed, allowing it to flow naturally and harmoniously. By sharing our wealth, be it material, emotional, or intellectual, we create a ripple effect that benefits all. Greed also teaches us the value of limits. A person who endlessly consumes may find themselves sated but not fulfilled. Fulfillment comes not from having everything but from knowing what is enough. This understanding transforms greed from a destructive force into a creative one. It allows us to pursue what truly matters, aligning our desires with purpose. Imagine a society where greed is not vilified but understood. Schools teach children not just to suppress their desires, but to channel them toward meaningful goals. Governments encourage cooperation over competition, creating systems that reward generosity and sustainability. In such a world, greed would no longer be a curse but a tool for progress. Even on an individual level, greed can be redefined. It can become the greed for knowledge, the greed for improvement, or the greed for experiences that enrich not only oneself, but also those around us. These forms of greed, rooted in growth and connection, highlight the potential within this often maligned trait. The gift of greed lies in its paradox. It is both a curse and a blessing, a burden and a tool. When we embrace this duality, we can transcend the limitations of our human nature and ascend to something greater. Greed, like the universe, is expansive. It can pull us into its gravitational force, or it can propel us into new heights of creativity and enlightenment. Ultimately, greed is a force that reflects our deepest desires and fears. It is a teacher, a challenger, and a mirror. By understanding its dual nature, we can harness its power for good, transforming it into a gift that benefits not only ourselves, but also the world around us. So the question remains, what will you do with your greed? Will you let it consume you, or will you let it guide you toward balance and creation? In the end, the choice is yours, as it always has been. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the paradoxes of life. If you found this video thought-provoking, give it a like and share it with others who might enjoy unraveling these mysteries. Don't forget to subscribe for more content exploring the edges of existence. Until next time, question everything and keep exploring your own destiny. Take care. Bye-bye.